Hey everybody, and welcome back to some more Feed the Beast Beyond. Last episode, we were working on finalizing our Applied Energy 6.2 system. We made ourselves an ME crafting terminal, and we also got a storage bus for the small storage crate, allowing us to store all of our items and access, and more importantly, craft with all of them from easily within inside of this crafting terminal here. And so now I feel like we're at the point in this mod pack where we have all of the basics that I like to have before we start playing around with some new mods and trying to set up some cool stuff. We got ourselves a basic audibling system, as well as a fairly easy way to get a large number of resources with our vertical digger. We've also got a nice renewable source of power in the solar panel, and we've also got a basic form of storage that allows us to craft with all of the items that we have and that we can get from our audibling system and from our vertical digger. And so now I want to start working on some of the different mods and some of the newer stuff that is available in 1.10, starting with a mod called Woot, which is a mod that wasn't available in 1.7. I believe it was available in 1.9, but I never actually got around to playing with it. And this mod is a new way of setting up mob spawners. And also, if you can hear zombies, for some reason, the way I've set this up, there are certain areas behind these walls I've dug out a bit too far. I have no idea. There's zombies around here somewhere. I can hear it. It's incredibly loud, but I have no idea where it is. Oh my goodness. You know what? Hold on a second. Let me quickly just turn hostile creatures all the way down. But Woot is a mod that gives you a new way to set up mob farms that don't require any mobs whatsoever, which actually makes them incredibly useful on servers like this one that I'm playing on right now, because having mobs all over the place, even mobs that are going to be killed fairly soon, is fairly laggy. And this allows you to create a mob spawner that doesn't have any mobs. Now, before we get into Woot too much, one thing that we are going to have to do before we get into it is get quite a lot of mob heads, because first of all, if we look at the recipe for the Woot manual, which is going to tell us how to do all the stuff in Woot, to make this, we need a normal Minecraft book, as well as any kind of head, a player head, an enderman head, a dragon head. And also, if we look at some of the items in the Woot mod here, for example, the Mob Factory Tier 1 Capstone, this thing also requires some mob heads to make the iron-plated skull. And then also, if we look at the skull die inside of that also requires yet another mob head. And so we are going to need probably about 4 or 5 mob heads in order to get started, in order to get into just the basic tier of a Woot spawner, which we'll talk about once we get into that. But before we get into that, we need to be able to get mob heads at least somewhat more reliably than just killing mobs with our iron sword. Now, as far as I know, there are 2 ways to do this. There are probably more ways to do it, but the 2 tools that I know of that can easily become beheading tools are the cleaver from Tinker's Construct. Really, any tool from Tinker's Construct can have beheading, or any sword, I think, any weapon from Tinker's Construct can have beheading, but the cleaver actually comes with beheading by default, and then you can, of course, add more beheading to it. But what we're going to use is actually the Ender Sword from Ender.io, mostly because I don't want to spend a whole episode making a cleaver from Tinker's Construct and then upgrading it with a bunch of additional attributes, and instead, we can fairly easily make the Ender with a stick and then 2 dark steel, which is made in the alloy smelter with 1 iron ingot, 1 core powder, and then 1 piece of obsidian. It's significantly easier than making a cleaver from Tinker's Construct, and also it's a tool that allows you to add the ability to recharge it, and so if we put it in an anvil with an empowered crystal, if we hover over here, actually, it tells us that if we empower it with a vibrant crystal, in an anvil, it will then allow us to recharge the sword instead of having to remake it or to repair it with dark steel. So, let me quickly grab 2 ingots worth of iron here. The pulverized coal we can make fairly easily. I'm pretty sure we can make it in the crusher if we wanted to, but we're going to make it in the sag mill just because it's here. And we're also going to grab ourselves 2 obsidian. We might need a little bit more obsidian in today's episode. I'm not quite sure. The Woot mod doesn't really, the Woot mod looks like it uses a lot of obsidian, but actually a lot of the stuff, and these crafting recipes, by the way, do look a little ridiculous when you look into them, and they're all just it keeps going and going and going. But a lot of the recipes in the Woot mod don't actually use up all of the items in the mod. For example, in this crafting recipe here, the hammer, the obsidian, and the connector die are all not used up in the recipe. They're all reusable again and again and again. So the only thing that's actually used in this recipe is the nether quartz, the redstone block, and the lapis lazuli. But we're getting a bit ahead of ourselves for now. Let's come back over to our sag mill. Let's grab ourselves some pulverized coal. We can put that into the alloy smelter with the iron and the obsidian. And a couple of seconds later, we get ourselves 2 dark steel. Nice. We can then craft that up with our stick like so to get ourselves the ender. Good stuff, good stuff. And again, if we hover over it, you can see there in the bottom right, increased skull and ender pearl drop. So we kill enderman, we have a higher chance of getting ender pearls as well as enderman heads, but also killing things like skeletons and zombies and stuff like that also just grants us in general a larger chance of getting the skull drops. And so guys, what I'm going to do now, I'm going to go away, I'm going to try and get at least 4 or 5 mob heads, and I'll be back in a second. And a good bit of mob killing later, and we now have 4 zombie heads and 1 skeleton skull, which should be enough to get ourselves at least a basic Woot spawner up and running. But before we get to that, there were a couple of things that I did during the cut that I think I should talk about. First things first is the new mining portal that we have over here to the left of the nether portal. This thing is super easy to make. All you need are 14 of these portal frames, which are made using the mining multi-tool and some stone brick. The mining multi-tool is also super easy to make with a stick, a cobblestone pickaxe, a flint and steel, and then 2 stone bricks again. And it takes the exact same form as the nether portal does, and all you have to do, walk into it, hold down shift, and it will teleport you over into the mining dimension. The reason why I made this dimension is because it is super easy to kill mobs on this massive flat open world. They spawn all over the place, and it's a lot easier to hunt out skeletons, creepers, zombies, and endermen, as opposed to like spiders and witches and all that kind of stuff. And it makes it a lot easier to attack and then run away instead of trying to get around trees and all that kind of stuff. And I also ended up killing a lot of sheep. You can probably tell I've got 38 wool and then 54 raw mutton in my inventory, because for some reason there are a ton of sheep in this mining dimension. I'm not quite sure if it's just the biome that we're in or what, but there are so many sheep all over the place. And so during the daytime between the night cycles, while I was waiting for my mobs to spawn, I just went around and killed a couple of sheep, because there are just flipping loads of them in that dimension. And then finally I also made some iron armor as well, just to make it a little bit easier for me to not die to all of the skeletons, creepers, and zombies. Also, speaking of making things easier, people did tell me in the comment section of a previous video that the rapid health generation when you're full on hunger is actually a vanilla mechanic that was added with, I think, with the 1.9 combat update, which made it significantly easier to kill a bunch of mobs, because all I had to do was back up, eat a little bit of blueberry juice, or even fly up using the jetpack, eat a bit of blueberry juice, then come back down and fight them all again with almost full health, which was pretty nice. But now that we've got all of this stuff, we can finally start on a basic tier 1 Woot spawner. So the first thing I'm going to do here is get the Woot manual. I think we might already have a book in here. We do not, but we should still have what it takes to make a book, because I'm fairly certain that we have some sugarcane. Really, we don't? Oh, do we have any paper? Oh, we don't. What the heck? Okay, well, in that case then, the first thing I'm going to make is the mob factory layout, because essentially what this does is it's going to show us the outline for where we have to build the mob spawner. And the mob spawner from Woot is a multi-block structure kind of akin to the blood magic altar. It's got a very blood magic-y feel to it in the way that you build the altar, and then there are multiple tiers to the altar. You can get a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and tier 4 mob spawner, with each one being able to spawn progressively more and more kind of, I guess, rare mobs or more difficult mobs. So for example, the tier 1 altar can spawn things like chickens, it can spawn, I think, cows, sheep, and pigs, although I haven't tested that. And then as you go up, I think you need a tier 3 altar in order to be able to spawn things like enderman, and then for things like withers, you need to get a tier 4 altar. Now again, they don't actually spawn them, but it kind of simulates a spawner in that it will just provide the drops every so often, given that you continue to provide the spawner with power. So instead of me talking about it, let's go ahead and make one. So to start with here, we're going to make the mob factory layout. For this, we need a piece of stone and also a factory casing. The factory casing is made using the Yar hammer, 1 casing die, and then 1 obsidian. So as I mentioned earlier, there were 3 different things in Woot that don't disappear when you craft, and those 3 things are the Yar hammer, anything that ends in the word die, pretty much all of these things here that end in the word die are all reusable, and then obsidian. Obsidian is reusable in certain crafting recipes. I'm not quite sure if it's reusable in all of the crafting recipes. For example, if we look at the recipe for under iron, which is used quite a lot within the Woot mod, this is made with the mesh die here, which I'm not quite sure if that gets used up or not. Hopefully it doesn't, but it might do. I'm not quite sure. We're going to find out, I guess, here, because we do need to make ourselves quite a bit of under iron. It's used in almost every recipe. Quite a lot of them need these under iron plates. And so to start with here, we're going to make ourselves a Yar hammer. Super simple stuff. 2 sticks, 2 string, and then 3 nether brick. Nether brick is another common factor in Woot. You need quite a lot of it, and so I did go through to the nether, get a little bit more netherrack, and smelt up a stack of it into into nether bricks. And so now, if we come on back over to our ME terminal, we should be able to fairly easily make ourselves the Yar hammer if we can get some sticks. 1 second, let's just do something a little bit like that. Get ourselves the Yar hammer. And so now we should be able to make pretty much everything else. So to make the mob factory layout, we still need to get ourselves 4 under iron plates, 1 casing die, and then that piece of obsidian. And the casing die requires a golden ingot, another stone, the obsidian, which again, I'm not quite sure if the obsidian gets used up in that scenario, so I did go get some more obsidian while I was away, just in case this does get used up, because I think it might. Let's see here. So, obsidian. We don't have any obsidian in the system. We've got 10. We didn't get that obsidian back. So it looks like when you're making the dies, it does actually use up the obsidian, but I'm fairly certain that if we were to go ahead and make, for example, this recipe here, that this piece of obsidian would not get used up. We're going to find out in a second if that's true, and also, this recipe here also should not get used up, but to start with, we need to make ourselves some of this pulverized under iron, which is made with a normal iron ingot, the Yar hammer, nether brick, obsidian, and the mesh die. Did we just make the mesh die? We did not. Let me quickly make myself the mesh die. Again, I think the obsidian is going to get used here, but I'm pretty sure that that mesh die won't get used up, given that it used obsidian to make it, although I am just guessing at that point. Let me go ahead and see about making some of this pulverized under iron. Now we've got everything apart from the nether brick, so we'll go ahead and I guess we'll make quite a bit of nether brick here because it is used an awful lot. We'll start with 12 or 13, and then we will craft all of that up into a bunch of this pulverized under iron, and as you can see, it didn't use up any of the obsidian, any of the mesh die, or the hammer. It did use up iron, although you didn't really see it because it just pulled it out of the system, and so now we should be able to go ahead and throw this into here. I did also, by the way, click this little button that I missed in the top left the first time I placed down the powered furnace, which allows you to auto-split items. So as soon as you put any item into one of the 2 slots in the powered furnace, it will go ahead and automatically evenly split them between the 2 slots so that they smelt as fast as is possible. And now that we've got ourselves some of this under iron, we can really start to get things moving here. So for the factory casing, we need 4 plates. The plates are fairly easy to make. Is it the casing die we need? It is not. What die do we need for this thing? For this thing, we need the plate die, which is again a very similar recipe, although this time we do need some slabs, which we do not yet have. So let's go ahead, and that's not the right one. They all look so similar. Let me go ahead and make this guy. Once we've got all the plate dies though, progressing on and making higher tiers of stuff should be super simple. And that's going to get us 4, which I think is all we need for now. And so for this, we can go ahead and craft up all of, there we go, okay, the server's just lagging a little bit. That's going to get us 4 factory casing, and then we can use that factory casing to make ourselves the mob factory layout. So if I was to come on around into here, and actually my pickaxe did break while I was out and about, so let me quickly whip up another one of those. I don't want an emerald pickaxe, I would like one of these peridot pickaxes. Let's take that guy. And so I am going to, for now, place this smack bang in the middle of the room like that. And you can see by default, it shows the layout of a tier 1 mob factory. And now if we right click it, it will go ahead and show tier 2. It even tells you in chat that it's now showing a tier 2. If we right click it again, it will show a tier 3. And then if we right click it for a 4th time, it will go ahead and show us the tier 4 mob factory, which is the highest tier of mob factory you can make in Woot. And for those wondering, it's 11 by 11 by 8 is the maximum size you're going to need in order to build this biggest tier of mob factory. And for today, we're probably not going to get past tier 1. Possibly, we might look into making a tier 2 one at some point. But if we do look at the Woot mod again, and we look at what is required for a tier 2 altar, you need to start getting into these orange blocks, and for the orange blocks, you do need quite a bit of blaze powder. You can see here, there are quite a few orange blocks, and we don't have anywhere near that much blaze powder, and so we might get into it a little bit later on, but for now, we're going to stick probably with the tier 1 altar. So for this thing, we need a bunch of these, what are they called? They're called mob factory blocks grey, and also a bunch of mob factory blocks red, as well as the factory controller at the top here. That is this block over here, the controller, which also requires 4 more mob heads. Oh, I did not know that. Okay, so we might have to cut away again to get yet more mob heads, because we need 4 for this, and then also, if we look at the back here, we need 2 of these mob factory tier 1 capstones, each of which requires an iron plated skull, which require 2. You do get 2, and so that should provide for both of these. But then we also need the skull die, so we need 3 skulls to make these 2 alone, and then an extra skull if we're going to make the book. So even if we don't make the book, that still leaves us with only 2 skulls. We need 4 in order to make the controller here. So I'm going to have to cut away again and get some more skulls in a second. But before I do that, we're also going to need the mob factory, which is a little bit less skull intensive, and it goes in the middle here. And so we should be able, I think, to make quite a bit of this. Let me see here real quick. How many of these do we need? 1, 2, 3, 6, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I think we need 13, 14 gray, and I think it's 13 red, so 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Yeah, so 14 gray and 13 red blocks. All right, let's head back over to the crafting station and see if we don't have what it takes to make these. So, thankfully, I did kill a lot of skeletons and a lot of zombies while we were out and about, and the gray blocks are made by combining bone with a factory casing, and the red blocks are made by combining rotten flesh and a factory casing. I think, unfortunately, the factory casing does get used in this scenario. Yeah, it does. So we are going to need to get ourselves 27 factory casing. We've already got 3, and so 24 more factory casing to make this happen, which means rounded up to the nearest multiple of 4, we're going to need 28 of these under iron plates. And so let's go ahead and see if we have what it takes here. I'm fairly certain that we might actually, looking at this, yeah, we do totally. Okay, let's throw that back in there. Then we can go ahead and craft up these again. Thankfully, they look more expensive than they are. All we're really spending here is under iron. All the rest of the stuff is completely reusable. And so once we've got all of those, we can go ahead and craft up a bunch of them into the grey ones. I don't want to accidentally overdo it here because we do need exactly 14 of those. And this the factory casing is a little bit precious. And then let's go ahead and craft up the remaining 9 of these as well, or 13 of these. And I think that should be about it. All right, let me see here. If I throw all these down, does that fill up all of the phantom spaces? Not quite. We made one too many of the grey ones and not quite enough of the red ones. Thankfully, we've got enough factory casing left to make one more of these mob factory block red. So we'll throw that down there. And then let's look at making 2 of these mob factory tier 1 capstones. I think they should also be fairly easy if you exclude all of the mob grinding required in order to get the heads. But for these, we need 4 lots of stone. I think it's showing chiseled stone. I'm fairly certain the normal stone will work just fine. 3 glowstone and then 1 factory cap. This is made with 4 obsidian, which again, I think will be used this time. Factory casing, glowstone, and the factory connector, which is made with a connector die. Oh my goodness, there are so many tiers of crafting in this mod. But again, once we've got it all set up, making more of these and making multiple tiers of these will be a lot easier because we are going to need multiple of these. Because to the best of my knowledge, each of these mob factories can only actually spawn one kind of mob. And so we're going to have multiple different ones of these if we want to have multiple different mobs being spawned, which of course we are going to want to have to do. I would like to get Enderman spawning at some point so we have a nice renewable source of ender pearls. I would also like to get the basics covered, like skeletons and zombies and spiders, so that we've got things like bones that we can use for bone meal if we want to do some farming and all that kind of stuff, just to make life a little bit easier going forward and to make sure that we don't really have to go out and do any more of that mob grinding to get a bunch of heads or to get bones or rotten flesh or anything like that, really. So we do now have it's a bit of a maze as well because everything looks so similar. I keep misclicking on like the wrong thing and then having to double back a little bit to get to the right place. So we don't need just yet any more factory casing. Do we have what it takes to make this? We do. Okay, so we got the cap. Now we got the cap. That is that covered. And then for this, we need the skull bit. Okay, first of all, let me just check. We don't already have that, right? No, we don't. Okay, I don't want to accidentally make more of those than I need to. Can we make this? We can indeed. And then can we make 2 of these? We almost can. We just need a little bit of stone, which we don't quite have yet. Let me go ahead and smelt up. I think 3 stone should be enough. That is going to get us 1 of those factory caps, although we do need 2 of them. Oh, and it used up this thing as well. Can we make another one? We can, but we need more obsidian. Oh my goodness. Okay, this recipe is getting a lot more difficult than I imagined it being. All right, guys, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go away. I'm going to get some more obsidian so we can craft up the second one of these tier 1 capstones. I'm also going to get at least 2 more mob heads, and I might try and get a 3rd so we can actually make the Woot manual. I'll also get some sugar cane so we can make some paper to make the book, and I'll be back in a second. All right, so again, a little while later and a bit more mob killing, we now have 3 more of these heads. We've got 2 zombie heads and 1 skeleton skull, which should be all of the heads, hopefully, that we need for today's episode. I also went ahead and got all of the stone and all the other stuff that we need in order to make the second tier 1 capstone for the other side of this altar here. And also, I moved the altar back by 1 because I realized that I put the mob factory layout 1 block too far down, and so instead of being here, I moved it up to here and then moved all the other blocks over as well, so it's now perfectly centered on the room. And so now go ahead and put that there, and all we are missing is the mob factory as well as the mob controller, both of which I'm fairly certain we should have all the materials to make. So I made some more under iron. We've also got some more netherrack if and when we need it. And so now if we come back over here, and also if you're wondering why there were tools in that chest, I've been trying to take stuff out of the crate over here to make a little bit more space for all the stuff that I've been putting in it, mostly all the mob drops that we've been getting, but it is still pretty full. I'm fairly certain I couldn't put all of this stuff in. No, I can't, but I did get more sugarcane, and so we should now be able to make ourselves, we'll start with the mob controller, because I'm fairly certain we have everything to make that. We do. And then finally we have the mob factory. For this, all we're missing is the tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 upgrades. These are made using 3 under iron, 1 factory casing, and then 5 of quartz shards in the case of the tier 1 upgrade, I think emerald shards in the case of the tier 2 upgrade, and then diamond shards in the case of the tier 3 upgrade. To make these shards, you guessed it, we have to make yet another type of dye. This time it's the shard dye. Thankfully, it's super easy to make and it is reusable, and hopefully that should be pretty much everything. We can go ahead and make 9 of those. We might as well just do this by hand because we've got the diamond there, and then I'm fairly certain we have an emerald because we saw it earlier in today's episode. Kapow! And so now we should finally be able to make all of this stuff. The AE system is full. Let me quickly try that again. We might as well keep these in our inventory because there's nowhere for them to go in the system, and it's going to get backed up and cause more problems than they are worth, but we can go ahead and craft up the spawner. Nice. Now, unfortunately, that is not the end of our job, because just putting these down does not really do anything. What we need to do now is we need to specify which mob we want our mob factory here to actually spawn. And to do that, we are going to need this guy over here, the mob prism. You'll see underneath, it says attack to capture mob, use on controller to program. And so this thing is fairly cheap, but a little bit tricky to get because it requires 6 different colors of dye, 2 under iron, 1 mob prism frame, which requires 2 more under iron, another prism dye this time, which I also don't think we have. Thankfully, we do have some more ender pearls. I killed quite a lot of endermen in the mining dimension, and also we did actually get, what is it called? We got like an enderman heart or something? A nebulous heart, which can actually be crafted up, if I'm not mistaken, into 3 ender pearls. It can indeed, which you get those by killing endermen, by the way. That's a nice couple of extra ender pearls. You can also use, by the way, that nebulous heart, I think for, what's the mod called here? Let me quickly find it out. Relinquiry is the mod that's from, and there is some stuff you can make with that heart, and we might look into that a little bit later on, but for now, at least, I would rather have the ender pearls. So now that we've got ourselves the prism dye, we should almost be able to make this, but we are missing the Eye of Ender, and I'm fairly certain that I don't have any blaze powder. I don't. Before we go off to the nether, though, to get that, let me see about getting all of these dyes. I think most of these should be fairly easy, because if we look in here, let's take out the ender pearl, because again, we have 0 space. We've got some dandelion yellow over here, and let's go ahead and actually just craft all that up for now into dandelion yellow. Do we have any poppies? We do not. However, I know for a fact that there are some just outside our base here, because we can use red and yellow dye to make orange dye. Blue dye is just lapis, and then purple dye is just the lapis and some of this red dye from the poppies. And so that's 5 of the 6 dyes taken care of fairly easily. Now, the normal way that you get green dye is, of course, by smelting cactus, but in this case, I don't really feel like making a trek out to the nearest desert in order to get the green dye, and so what I'm probably going to do is use the Britannia version of the dye instead, because if I again look at the prism, you'll see that it flicks through 3 different kinds of dye: the vanilla Minecraft dye, the Gendustry dye, and then also the Britannia dye. And the Britannia dye can be crafted using the pestle and mortar from Britannia, as well as any color of mystical petal, which can of course be crafted from any color of mystical flower, and we can get those flowers fairly easily by creating some floral fertilizer. So first things first, let me see about crafting up all of the other dyes, because like I said, those should in theory, be fairly easy. So we'll get a bunch of rose red, a bunch more dandelion yellow. We can combine red and yellow to get orange. We can combine red and some lapis to get the purple. We've already got the blue, of course. And then finally, for the green one, we're going to need some of that floral fertilizer. You can make it fairly easily using bone meal and then rose red and dandelion yellow. I believe you can use any mixture of these you like. I'm going to use 2 of each like that, and then we can go ahead and do this as well. Want to make sure we don't run out of rose red, although it's fairly easy to get outside, and so it's not too big of a deal. I'm also fairly certain that that doesn't work, I guess. I thought that would work, but apparently it does not. And so now we're really just hoping that within these 2 pieces of floor fertilizer, we get a mystical green flower. If we don't, it's not too big of a deal. We can just get some more of these dandelions, but it would be nice. Oh, we did as well. Nice. Okay, so now we've got ourselves a mystical green flower. We can craft that up into the petals. If we come on over here, the pestle and mortar is super easy to make. I'm fairly certain that it is made entirely out of wood. It is indeed. We need a bowl, which is just some slabs. We made those earlier for one of our dyes. Again, the system is full, and so we can't put stuff in, which is a real pain. But what we can do is we can quickly make ourselves some sticks. I'm fairly certain. Let me throw some like sand on the floor here. Can we do this? Oh, we can indeed. We'll take that and this guy to make some more sticks. We can throw the sticks in there, craft up the pestle and mortar, use the pestle and mortar with the green petals to get some floral green powder. We might as well make 2 for now. And then for now, I'm going to go ahead and put like some of this stuff away in this chest. It's getting to be a bit of a mess, but we'll organize some of this stuff between episodes here. We'll get rid of like the death certificate there from when I died to a skeleton. So now if we come back over to here, I think we have pretty much everything it takes to make the mob prison. Oh no, we don't have this thing because we don't have the blaze powder. And so what I'm going to do real quick, guys, I'm going to go to the nether, I'm going to kill a blaze, I'm going to get a blaze powder, and I'll be back in a second. You know what? I don't even have to kill a blaze because somebody else has already been to the nether and killed one for me. So I'm just going to pick up the blaze rod, head on right back. It is dark right now. We don't need it to be dark because once we've got this prism, we are going to have to find a mob that we want to start spawning, or kind of quote-unquote spawning, theoretically spawning in our mob factory. And I think I'm going to go with skeletons to begin with, because bone meal and bones in general are such a useful resource to have for things like farming and also just in general for other crafting recipes. And so, if we come back over here, let's craft up the blaze rod into blaze powder. And actually, before we do that, can we get more blaze powder out of it by putting it through the sag mill? We can indeed. We can indeed. So let's just run it through there real quick, doubling the amount of blaze powder that we get, and also getting ourselves a bit of sulfur as well. Not necessarily necessary, but that is fine. Now that we've got that, we can craft up the mob prison, and we are finally getting towards the end of this maze of crafting recipes that we have found ourselves in here. So apparently the AE system just wanted to put those dyes anywhere in the world, and I think that these have to go in the correct position that they're shown in the recipe, which looks something a little bit like that. And now that we have ourselves a mob prison, all we have to do is capture the mob that we would like to start spawning in our mob factory, and then you do also have to provide power to the mob factory as well in order for it to start working. So let us head over into this little forest over here. I spent a little bit of time before I built the mining dimension fighting skeletons over here, and so I know this is where all the cool skeletons hang out. Although it would appear that my lack of coolness has driven them all away. Let me go quickly check the mining dimension and see if I can't find any over there. Just left click, boop, and run. Run, 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 run. Alright, so now we've made it back in one piece. We can see if we hover over our mob prism that it says the mob contained is skeleton, and underneath that it says tier 1. That is the tier of mob factory that we need in order to get it to start spawning them. It does require power, and so for the time being I'm just going to take the basic capacitor bank that we have here and put it underneath of the controller. Eventually we will, of course, hold on real quick, let me put that back down for a second because I do also need a chest, and so we do need some kind of power to keep our system online. But once I have got myself a chest, this is where all of the output from the factory is going to go. We can go ahead and pick this up. Like I was going to say, in the future, we'll put down some power cables running from here over and to the spawner. We might even start looking into some different mods that work with wireless power to get our power across and into the factory here. But essentially, we're going to go down here. I'm going to put this thing right about there. The power does go into the factory spawner. There you can see it says 0 RF right now. You don't put it into the controller. As soon as we throw this down, what are we missing? Okay, so if you need to know what's wrong with your mob factory multi-block, just simply right-click on the mob factory block in the center, and it will tell you what the problem is. You can see right now, for all 4 tiers of the multi-block, there is an unprogrammed mob spawner. I thought that it would form without the mob spawner having like a specific mob to spawn, but all you have to do, take your mob prison, right-click on the top there, and that should... There we go, valid input. It took a few seconds there to actually form up. But now, if we go ahead and put this down here, right now, it's still got no redstone flux. And so I think what I am going to have to do... Oh, no. I forgot about that. I completely forgot that I built my base over the void. Okay, hold on. Getting that weird frame rate bug that we had in Sky Factory. Let me quickly relog here. If you do get that for some reason, we had it in Sky Factory where when you died, the frame rate would just tank, and then when you relogged, it was fine again. So let me quickly charge up my jet. Oh, I can't because it's in the thing. Gosh dang it. Okay, let me let me quickly try and get in from the other side here. Is that also no? Okay, I think we're at least a little bit safe here. All right, we don't need this here anymore. That can go now that we've actually put down all the stuff. Okay, so let me. Oh, I've still got the capacitor bank on me. Let me put this down here. We will set the top of that to output, although it does seem to be outputting already. Let me quickly charge my jetpack up as well. But what should be happening now is it should be using power, and it should be turning that power into skeleton loot, essentially. And so if we use our jetpack here, let's quickly get back out, and we look in our chest. Right now, it doesn't have anything. If we shift-click here, you can see it does have, at the bottom there, it looks like it has a lot of stuff in its inventory, but unfortunately, it's not. There we go. It's starting to output them into the chest here. And now, if we head on back around, and finally, at the very end of the episode, make the guide that tells you how to do all of this, which I can't do because I don't have any fudging. Alright, so I've moved the capacitor bank back. The mob factory does have an internal buffer of power, and so it should continue to run for at least a little while here. Let's go ahead and first of all make some paper. We do now have the sugarcane to do so, and then once we've got the paper, let's just grab our last piece of leather, craft up a book, and then we can use that book with whichever mob head we have left, the zombie mob head, to get ourselves the Woot manual. Alright, so this thing will walk you through everything that you need to know, everything that we've basically just done up until this point, but it also has some interesting information in it that we can use to upgrade our altar. So for example, if we skip on through these first couple of steps here, it will say, first of all, it tells you how expensive to run each factory is. And so you can see that a tier 1 factory with no upgrades uses 80 redstone flux per tick, and it will produce drops, I believe, every 320 ticks. If we hover over here, yeah, you can see there it says it spawns one mob bracket S every 320 ticks. It's spawning skeletons. There are 20 ticks per second, and so that's about 16 seconds. So once every 16 seconds, it simulates a skeleton spawning. It then kills that skeleton and drops its stuff into this chest here, essentially giving us unlimited skeleton drops as long as this thing contains power. But there are also upgrades that we can make. For example, if we look over here, there is the rate upgrade, which spawns mobs every 160 ticks as opposed to every 320 ticks, making it twice as fast. And that's just a tier 1 version. There is, of course, a tier 2 version and a tier 3 version. And this is where I was kind of comparing it to Blood Magic, where you can put in different blocks to make your quote-unquote altar. This is a factory, not an altar, but to make your factory do different things. And in the case of the upgrades, you just place them down, I think in the middle next to the mob factory. I haven't played around with it too much, but you can put them down and you can stack them up on top of the factory here. And there are a bunch of different upgrades. You got rate upgrades, looting upgrades, XP upgrades. I think there's a beheading upgrade. It's called the decapitate upgrade, which gives you a higher chance of getting mob heads. Would have been nice to have at the beginning of the episode, but we do need a bunch of mob heads for some stuff in Ender.io later on down the line. And it also even has a Blood Magic upgrade built within it, which allows you to kill the mobs that are spawned and then produce life essence, which you can then output into a tank and use for Blood Magic, which we will probably end up doing at some point in the future. And so we're probably going to be using these for most of our mob spawners, just because, like I mentioned earlier, they're really friendly for the server. They don't produce anywhere near as much lag as having a bunch of mobs in. And also, we can set up a ton of them. We can set up a bunch of these for a bunch of different mobs. Right now, we've just got the tier 1 skeleton version, but we could set up multiple tier 1 versions for skeletons, zombies, creepers, etc. We could set up the tier 3 version for Enderman. I'm not quite sure what falls into the tier 2 version, but then especially the tier 4 version, if we can ever get that far and try and set up some kind of stuff for wither spawning. It does get very expensive. If we look at the white version of the block, it does require nether star shards, which of course are made in the same way here, and you need quite a lot of these white blocks in order to make the tier 4 mob factory. But now we have a fully automated, almost fully automated, not really that automated to be fair, we don't have power going to it, but we have a nice, easy, lag-free way to get essentially unlimited drops from skeletons that we can speed up in the future to make faster if we need more bone meal. And like I said, in the future I would like to expand these and get more of them and get bigger ones and just have a bunch of these spawning a bunch of mobs. But for now, guys, as always, thanks for watching. If you did enjoy the video and you haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe, the link's down below, hit the bell to be the first ones to know when new videos go out, and hey, why not check out one of the 2 videos on screen? Again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.